Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 872. My opponent started off with d4, and I went with knight f6. I kind of alternate between knight f6 and d5 when I'm playing against d4. With d5, I usually go for the Slav, and with knight f6, I usually go for the Nimzo Indian. Those are like my main openings. But occasionally I like to mix it up, and at this point, I decide to go for a Grunfeld, and that's I introduce with the move g6. Now this could also lead to a King's Indian, so White has to choose a setup at this point that works against either the King's Indian or the Grunfeld, and knight c3 is the most logical move, preparing e4 in case Black goes for the King's Indian. And if Black goes for the Grunfeld, he needs to play d5 right away before e4 comes in and prevents it. And then this is, so Black has chosen the Grunfeld, and White has a number of different ways to meet it. And the way I play is the way that White played in this game, which is to just take, and that's the main line. But there are other respectable alternatives here. There's knight to f3, there's bishop to f4, and there's bishop to g5. All of those have been, I've seen those. They've become kind of popular recently as ways to avoid the main line and still get a good position for White. So I think they're all reasonable ways for White to play, but I also think there's nothing wrong with the main line, and that's how I play myself with White. Anyway, we'll get to see that. He takes, I take, and then he plays e4, and this is the idea of the main line. Kick that knight again, gain a tempo, and build a big center, and Black usually trades there. This is one of the ideas of the Grunfeld is to let White build a big center and then start to counterattack it with moves like bishop to g7, pawn to c5, and knight to c6. So that's Black's plan for the moment. And there's different ways that White can respond to this. And the way that White chose is once again the way that I play. I think it's actually quite a simple way for White to play, and it leads to decent positions for White in my experience. So, but an alternative here is knight to f3, allowing this pin, and then maybe kicking the bishop later, or let's see, bishop to e3, directly supporting the center, is also a move. But I like this idea with bishop to c4, getting the bishop out of the way so the knight can come to e2 to support the center, and then there's no pin, or if the pin happens, then White can play f3 to block the bishop. So it just seems like a very convenient setup for White to me, although it's been shown that Black is fine here, and we'll see that. Black continues with c5. White goes knight e2, and I go knight c6. He goes bishop to e3, and I castle, and he castles. So we've got the typical setup, and then Black has a wide variety of choices here. I wanted to show one line. Yeah, I think I marked it out. This is a line in the opening. It just shows some kind of interesting ideas in the Grunfeld, in spite of the fact that this knight is here and f3 is available. Bishop to g4 is still one of the top moves in this position, actually the top move in this database. This was played quite a bit. Let's see, I don't remember the exact period, but it was a theoretical line that got abandoned after a while. But it's kind of interesting. So White kicks the bishop, but the bishop doesn't retreat right away. Black has a few ideas first and kicks this bishop, which is loose. So White doesn't really want to give up this light squared bishop and mess up his pawns over here by taking this bishop, so he retreats. Then Black continues, not moving this bishop, but taking a pawn over here and threatening this bishop. Once again, White usually chooses to take back rather than grabbing this bishop. And now the bishop drops back to e6, which would be a good square, except that White has this move d5. And this gives up the exchange. But in exchange for giving up the exchange, White has this queen on an interesting diagonal here, and potential attacking ideas. But once again, Black is not obliged to move this bishop immediately because there's a pin here, and so there's time for Black to play the move f6. And then there's different ways for white to continue here. Even though black is up the exchange, white is down the exchange. White has the bishop pair and attacking chances on the king side, and so it's actually a pretty balanced position. But it's not winning for white, so both sides can play this way. Anyway, kind of interesting. Let's go back to the game here. So anyway, I didn't choose that bishop g4 line. I chose the move queen to c7. My idea here is to kind of take a look at that bishop. And now the normal way of meeting this threat, it's not exactly a threat. There's kind of a latent threat against that bishop. The normal way to meet it is to play rook to c1 with the idea of, first of all, getting the rook off of that diagonal, so if things open up here, things won't go badly. And then if there's this exchange, when white takes back, the rook is defending the bishop, so the bishop does not have to move immediately. And black usually continues with rook d8, and the game would go on from here. So that would be typical kind of Grunfeld play. Let's see, my opponent played the bishop to d3 here, just getting out of the way immediately, and we're just out of the opening book at this point. And this is still fine for white. I think I think this is an interesting opening to play at the club level. Not everybody agrees with this because it has the reputation of being a very theoretical opening, but I think you can get to this position and just look for ideas, particularly if you're a tactical player. You might enjoy playing the black side, and if you like to have the positional advantages of extra space in the center, then you might prefer the white side of this, but I think it's playable from both sides. And even at the club level without knowing tons of theory. So anyway, that's my impression. Let's see. He went bishop d3. I played the exchange first. I did want to point out, well, first of all, the book move was rook c1. The chess engine likes the move rook b1, and I've seen a similar idea with rook b1 in various master games. Once again, it's just getting the rook off that diagonal, and maybe it's going to be more active on the B file than the C file. Just wanted to point out both of those are viable here. Let's see, and then on my part, instead of taking immediately, I could have thrown in the move rook to D8. Maybe it's a little better. It could have gone rook C1 here, and then there's this neat tactic. That's the thing about this opening, is you do always have to be on the lookout for these tactics. So this leads to a position of pretty much equality for black. You can put this knight here because if he takes, you push on with this pawn, and the bishop is pinned, so you're getting your piece back, and you'll probably round up that pawn, and white's pawn structure is a little bit messed up. Of course, after rook c1 and knight e5, he's not obliged to take the knight, but then he has to move this bishop again. So anyway, it looks like it's an okay position for black. So I didn't spot that idea. I just took, and this is often what black wants to do is, kind of get this d pawn here where it's a little bit less well defended. It's the only pawn that can defend it would be the e pawn, and has to move forward to do that, and that will open up this diagonal. So that's one of the ideas, is to weaken the center by trading off those pawns one by one. Let's see, and the other idea with queen c7 was to make space for the rook to come out to the center, and I'm putting more pressure on the d pawn once again. And here he played e5, which is a bit unusual. That's not usually the way white plays the Grunfeld. The typical way to play this, and better according to the chess engine, is rook c1. And then I could, say, move my queen out to unpin, and that this threat was becoming a big deal. But the queen can go out to a5. And once again, it's a typical kind of Grunfeld position with chances for both sides. So e5, maybe a slight mistake, but not a big deal. He still has a decent position here with all that space on the center. I played bishop to e6 here. He went rook c1 now, pinning my knight. I just brought my rook over, and he played bishop to e4. So bishop to e4 is a mistake. I would say this is the first mistake that white has made in this game. I mean, there were a few places where maybe I had a chance for a slight edge, but nothing big. But this is a definite mistake, and there's a tactic here that I can use to exploit it. So do you see the idea here? Okay, I'll pause the video if you want some time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. I did not spot this idea in the game, but in fact I could grab that center pawn because this pawn is just pinned. You know, my knight is pinned, and I was thinking, oh, with my knight pinned, I can't take that pawn. But of course, the bishop is available to take that pawn, and that's just good. And it's a much better pawn to take. I mean, I grabbed this pawn over here on a2, but that's not worth a whole lot. Even though, you know, I'm a pawn up for the next part of the game, the chess engine still thinks the position is balanced, and white is still doing fine. So he made a mistake, but I didn't exploit it. So I grabbed a pawn over here, and you know, have chances in the endgame, but white is still fine with the correct play. So let's see. He played queen a4. That's a good move, activating his queen, hitting my bishop. I drop back. I defend my knight. He was adding pressure to c6 there. So we get this exchange in, and then he played knight to c3. And this is a second, maybe slight mistake. Once again, I don't really fully exploit my advantage here, but knight to f4 is a little bit stronger for white because it leaves this pin in operation, and you know, I can still play rook a5, but well, he can pile up on the knight with queen to c4. It's starting to get a little bit awkward, actually. I maybe have to move my queen out of the way and try and stop a pawn from coming forward here. But the thing is that with the rook and queen battery, this my rook here is under defended, so if he can push that pawn forward, I'm going to lose some material over here. So so knight to f4 was the strongest move there. Let's see. So knight c3, and now I could just drop my rook back, and then the chess engine starts to give me an advantage at this point if I had played that rook a5 move. But I didn't play it. I actually didn't see that idea. He went knight c3, and I thought I had to escape this way. Yeah, the idea, in case I didn't make that clear, the idea with rook d to d8 is that this is no longer pinned with the knight here, so even if he pushes the pawn forward, I can just move the knight away, and he doesn't have any great discovery, so that's why rook d to d8 is a move there. Anyway, yeah, I didn't see that idea. I played rook to a5, you know, trying to unwind with tempo, hitting his queen. Queen could still go to f4, but, well, with the knight in the way, there's no battery along the c file, so I'll be okay. Let's see, he dropped his queen back to b3. I went queen d7, so unwinding from the pin, and now he went f4. And so this is the point actually where the course of the game changes. I think up to this point, even though you know, white made a few mistakes, I didn't exploit them, so the game was still in the balance here. But after f4, he just left this d pawn hanging, and yeah, I don't see any reason not to take it. So he could have defended that with a move like knight to e2. Maybe he didn't want to play something that passively, or maybe he just forgot it was hanging. The chess engine finds a nice way to defend the pawn, pretty clever tactical way of defending it. That's knight e4. And now if I grab the pawn, you can take here with check and drag my queen away from defense of the knight and win peace there. So I can't actually grab the pawn after knight e4. So that's indirectly defending it, and gets his knight to an active square. So white is still doing fine at this point. But after f4, and I grab the pawn, now finally black is better, and he makes the situation worse by this exchange. This is not so obvious, although why that makes it worse. But the recommended move here was queen to d1, and then I could play rook to d8. I'll cancel that. Not that rook. This rook to d8. Of course, that rook just gets taken there. You know, trying to set up some kind of battery like this. This is good for black, but not as good as what happened in the game. This is just winning for black after I take, and he takes with the bishop, and I take back with check. And, well, he played king h1. And then while I was thinking about my next move, he just resigned. And the next move I was planning is, in fact, the correct move. Rook a to c5. You know, I've got that knight. It's not quite in a pin, but it's going to be taken, so it has to move. It can move here or to a2 to defend the rook. But I can trade like this. And if he takes with the rook, I can just keep taking and then grab the pawn. But it turns out, say, he takes with the knight, I can grab the pawn anyway. And this is why White's position just falls apart. Now my bishop is coming out by taking here. And the big point is if he takes my queen, then rook takes knight leads to mate. So, so actually at the point when he resigned after playing right here, after playing king h1, then he resigned. So it was actually a justified resignation. I had already spotted this rook to c5 idea. I don't know if I would have spotted queen takes f4 there, but in any case, this is an overwhelming position for black, so he didn't resign too soon or anything. Anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon. Bye.